Okay, so I got something for you. You never want to just make big tangents when you're working on things, all the more if you're working on things with other people. So, when you're doing research to perhaps improve your process or improve your feature designs or your application in general, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're integrating any new things into your existing workflow. Now, it can become one of these like endless games of gotta catch them all when it comes to making your application use all the latest things, all the most current technologies, whatever the latest fads are, if there's a major new update for something, or if there's a better tool in general. And that will never go away. You're always going to find that there might have just been a better way to do something. And instead of just running to make that change, do your research, of course, do prototypes to the side, and confirm your theory before you commit those changes to your actual project, right? And then when you get to the point where you're able to commit those changes, like if you did a spike, for example, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to complete the current sprint that you're on if you're working solo, and make sure that you actually complete it according to the acceptance criteria that you wrote and committed to. The reason is because you want to get to a really, really solid state of closure with your current work effort so that as you pivot to a slightly different direction, you can focus on updating your project scope document or your plans in light of that while having the stuff that you were working on fully done. Does that make sense? If you do it that way, then what you're going to find is that you're getting to a checkpoint and you're pivoting, getting to a checkpoint and then pivoting again. And that process is going to make your development life a lot more stable. It's going to make it a lot more predictable. And you won't have like these awkward situations where you're like in the middle of something, it doesn't work, it's not finished, and now you're like jettisoning off into a whole different direction. Doing that is just not sustainable. It will wear you out. It'll put you in a tailspin, and you won't actually make progress. Applications that don't make progress towards their goals and just end up doing a big circle on like some like narrow corner, they don't do anything. They don't actually provide value for your potential customers or the people you're making the app for anyways. So you want to primarily focus on completing features and sticking with your sprint as you've designed it and as you've architected it. And then you introduce changes into your application. And let me just make a sidebar to focus just for a second on the importance of doing spikes, okay? So when I first started up this stream, one of the things I was saying is that I want to do a spike, and this spike is going to be dedicated to adding in WebAssembly. So instead of just doing this in my application off the riff and just running into it, I have a whole spike, which is just a repo dedicated to that very specific thing. The only purpose of this spike here is to test out the ability to compile WebAssembly from Rust and then have that being utilized in my front end to manage the canvas or something like it. Okay, so I'm going to do it here first. I'm going to extract my learnings, and then I'm going to incorporate it into what I'm already doing with my application, hopefully before I even get to the canvas part. Generally, you want to do spikes and research before you implement the feature, you know? But in case you haven't, you can still go back and do that. But just make sure this is a distinct step of its own, and then you incorporate it into your code or whatever using your sprint agile process. If you skip all that stuff, it might not be the worst thing in the world, but as your application begins to scale, as you begin to work with other people, as there's more risk, especially with security and stuff, if you don't use this process of organizing yourself, then what you risk is making software that's unstable, potentially unsecure, or introducing a crap ton of bugs. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're going through the proper process, and that process is going to include additional design. Anytime you're adding features, you need to be designing. You need to be designing. You need to be designing. You need to be thinking about all the elements that go into it, all the contingencies, all logging, error handling. How does this affect the builds? How does this affect infrastructure? All of those things need to be considered whenever you make a single change to your application going forward. So if you skip all that stuff, good luck.